I've had a background, obviously, in STEM fields. Growing up as a kid, I was very comfortable with math and physics, obviously, and so even the combination of the subjects that I took was physics, chemistry, and math. Did I know I will end up in the tech field? Maybe not. I just knew, I just was, very comfortable with sciences. And so when it came to picking, a program at university, I then chose to go for computer engineering and information technology, and that was with the current College for Science and Technology at the University of Rwanda. And from that time, I really enjoyed everything in the tech space, read a lot about it. When I did graduate, I joined the Government Implementation Agency then. It was RITA, today it's called RISA. It has evolved over time. And when I joined in, really I joined in as a junior tech person, was able to grow through the different roles. A lot of the work was focused on program and project management of IT projects, and so it was also a good exposure that was not just on the technical side of things, but also really program and project management. I then went on to do a master's in system design and management, which also again was at the intersection of both engineering and management, and was also a good one. And came back, continued with the Rwanda Development Board. I was managing the Kigali Innovation City, and then was appointed into this role. So naturally, I think moving from RDB, where a lot of it was on the implementation side, and then moving into the policy side of the tech world, I think was a natural transition, because you have a good sense on what is required from the implementation side, what are the challenges. And so when you get into the policy world, it wasn't like a completely new field, because I'd been in the industry for about 12 years before I got into this role. And it's been very exciting, a lot of growth, and a lot that we can do because of really the potential that technology offers all of us. So I remember when I was finishing high school, particularly, and I was applying to different colleges, and I was speaking to my dad, who has an engineering background, and I was trying to figure out, do I go into electrical engineering? He's a mechanical engineer by background, and so naturally, as the first daughter, I looked up to him as a role model, and so I was trying to figure out, okay, where do I go? Because there were many options. I could have ended in electrical engineering, mechanical, computer science, and we had a conversation around that, and he said, you know what, computer science seems to be an emerging field, it's exciting, it might be worth giving it a try. And so there had been also all these coding programs that were happening across the board that I'd been involved in at different stages when I was in high school. So naturally I felt like, okay, this is a very exciting field to get into, and so that's how I decided to pursue it. Little did I know about really the exciting work that came with it, but also the fact that, I mean, at that point, you don't think about the cross-cutting role, the enabling role that technology has. You're just looking at it as a field. You're looking at it more from, okay, I'm going to be a software developer, I'm going to, improve my skills in networking. And then you start working and you start to realize how really this is something that can be applied to every sector. It's really, it's exciting because you could solve for any problem that you could think about. Should you be interested in healthcare, there's really massive opportunities of how you can use technology to respond to that, whether it's agriculture. And so it's truly, really been an exciting journey, and I have no regrets for having chosen this field, even from the early days of trying to figure out which was the best program to go for. I could look at it in multiple ways. I think at a personal level, it's the growth really that comes with, being open to new challenges. This is a role where, every day has its own challenges. You're trying to solve for different problems, and so I think keeping an open mind and trying to figure out what is it that I'm learning in the whole process, and the growth that comes to with that, you can't trade it for anything. So I think for me, the biggest achievement has been at a personal level. If I look back 5 years, 10 years ago, it's amazing. I would not have thought of myself being in such a role, but then I still look back and I'm like, there's just been, massive personal growth on my side. In really taking on the various roles from the time I got into government as an entry-level engineer to the current role that I'm holding. So that's more really on a personal level. And just really, I think what it has also told me is that there has to be constantly a desire to learn. you can never be comfortable that you know it all. Like, it never happens in an industry like this. You know one thing, tomorrow there's disruption, there are new technologies coming up, and so there's that constant learning and unlearning that has to happen. And so for me, I feel, I mean, it's the best, it has been the best thing in terms of, growing me at a personal level. Now, when you look more beyond just the professional world, but just looking at us as a sector, as an industry, and you look back at 26 years ago for us as a country, and the journey that we've taken as a country, from really making those bold, ambitious, goals of putting, technologies front and center of everything that we do as a country. Now, you imagine 26 years ago, I was probably still in school, but you look at the massive progress, being able to build off those successes that everyone else has been part and parcel of. I think it's something, it's very impressive, and it really opens your eyes to why it's important to build teams, to build systems, to build institutions, because once you do that, then everyone that is going to come in these different roles has a strong foundation to build off from. And so I think that's also my biggest challenge, is in this role, to sort of figure out what foundations do we put in place, because 10 years from now, the technology landscape is going to be absolutely different. But are there things that we can do right today that will sort of, allow for us as a country to leapfrog, allow us as a country to be at the forefront of this technological revolution? And that's always going to be the constant objective and challenge that we have for ourselves. Seeing the teams grow and evolve over time, seeing, the gains that we continue to see doesn't mean that we've seen so much progress and all problems have been solved. I think the more we solve for, the more what we're dealing with today in today's world is the understanding that technology has a critical role in how it's going to transform lives. And so once you have that understanding across the board, across the population, the expectations are also different. So how constantly trying to understand what's the best way to meet those expectations and deliver on those expectations, because the lack of that will mean that people will look for alternatives, and that's not a good place to be in. And so really, it's difficult to quantify that there's this one major achievement, but I think at a personal level, as an industry, there's just been a massive evolution and growth, and that's what it's going to be, especially because technology in itself is a disruptive tool. I think a couple of them, and I wouldn't say they are challenges that are unique to Rwanda or even to myself in this position. I think it's challenges around having the critical talent, critical mass of the talent that you require. Like I said, technology is, over time becoming, the default way of solving for problems. It's being embedded in everything that people are doing. So it also means that there's already a huge demand for talent in numbers, but also in the quality of talent. And so being able to work with everyone to sort of produce that talent, things that the likes of ALU and ALX are doing to really close on that talent gap as much as possible, because this is really a function that is being embedded in each and every organization, and not just the public sector, but also, small and medium companies, trying to understand how it's really, a transformative tool. So talent is a big one. It's a big one even for the developed countries, who are constantly really trying to figure out how do we attract the best talent and how do we retain the best talent. And so I think it's going to be an ongoing problem, but it's how quickly you can solve for it to the point that attraction is no longer a problem and you're just focused on retention and delivering results. Then the second thing is really always around, again, we're still really staying in around resources, and we're talking about financial resources because there's always competing needs, and so trying to figure out what is a priority, what do I solve for, because the population for which you're solving for wants everything as soon as yesterday. So how do you mobilize the right partnerships? And really this brings me to the point of partnerships, because no one can do it alone, whether it's a financial institution trying to think about how they use technology to bridge the financial inclusion gap. They won't do it alone. So it's what are those partnerships that are so essential to ensuring that we are solving for the right problems, but at the right time, because the longer we delay to solve for them, it's a missed opportunity, but also we are delaying progress of a whole country. So I would say for me, those are the two big ones. And obviously the other one is really mindset change. I think it's one thing when you're already transitioning from what are the alternatives to technology and how do we completely shift everyone. But that mindset will go with really also solving for the basic questions. And I think when you look at where we are as a country, you think about the amount of coverage that we have, but when you think about how many people still live out of areas that are within areas of coverage but are still not able to meaningfully connect, then the question of affordability comes into play. And then you have to sort of figure out how do we ensure affordability so that you drive access and adoption, and also really fundamentally understand how technology is going to change lives, even at the smallest detail that you could think of. So they're big challenges, but they're not too big not to be solved. I think it's finding the right partnerships, the right teams, the right people that you can work together to really solve for them. But they're also exciting challenges for us as you grow at a personal level, but also as you think about how this transforms a whole economy and brings the much needed growth. Well, as a starting point, women make up at least, if not more, than 50% of our population. So it wasn't just a campaign for the sake of women empowerment. It was also one where, as we continue to think about technology being an enabler and technology really being at the forefront of pushing the inclusion agenda, making sure that we're really walking the talk. When we talk about leaving no one behind, it's not just a question of people living in urban areas and rural areas. You have to look at all these other nuances of the society. Who are those? Which are those categories of the population that continue to be left behind? Women is one of them, people with disabilities as well. But I think just very specifically on women, it was more to say if we're really going to be as inclusive as we say we want to be with our strategies, with our policies, with the way we're implementing, then we also must make sure that we are intentionally and deliberately designing our programs to be as such. So whether it's financial inclusion, we had to really go down and disaggregate the data to say, okay, we talk about financial inclusion. If it's at 90%, what does that mean? How many women, how many men? The women that are not financially included, leveraging digital technologies, why is that so? Do we need to have better targeted solutions? Because I think what we also learned very quickly is that one-size-fits-all programs may not necessarily allow you to achieve the impact you're looking for, but also the scale of impact. And so we have to be very deliberate and intentional about that. Also knowing that with the history of our country, you still have like a good number of women-led households. How do we ensure that those are not left behind as we think about connectivity, as we think about access to the different technologies, as we look at the opportunities that technology provide. But the other driving factor for us as a country was, and this you see everywhere, even in some of the developed countries or the countries that are at the top of being technologically advanced economies, you still see a very small fraction of women in the workforce. And so you think about it, and sometimes you don't realize the biases that come with, if you don't have a diverse team, what does that mean? The solution that is coming to the market, how is it addressing those unique needs that certain segments of the population may have? And so even for us, we had to make sure that we are promoting Made in Rwanda, projects and programs and tools, and how do we make sure that for those tools that are being developed in Rwanda, being developed for Rwandans, you have a diverse team at the back of building those tools that then can sort of think through and design solutions that are going to be a good fit for all the target groups that we're looking at. And so we're getting there. There's still the journey is still long. There's still a lot of work to be done there, because it's not just putting the tools in their hands, it's also to understand what could be the challenges they could face as they use them. Is it a question of digital literacy skills that are not there? How do we make sure that our digital literacy programs are very targeted, that we have a very fair targeting process that allows for us to have as equal women as men and boys and girls that get to benefit from these programs? If it's access to affordable devices, that in itself has to be embedded in how we do the targeting of such. And so those two reasons around us having close to 50% of our population being women, but also at the same time knowing that we don't have a diverse workforce, the people that are building these solutions, digital solutions is really what has driven us to drive this campaign. And it's not just a campaign, really. For us, it's always going to be a design metric for everything that we do as a country, because it's not just about women empowerment, but it's really around the inclusivity of different government programs.
Why is inclusivity and diversity in tech so important? How do you think it can benefit the industry, particularly the involvement of women?
Well, let's start with the fact that you have a target market. Take Rwanda. If you have a 14 million population, surely as you build solutions, you're not just looking to target 6 million or 7 million. So any company is hoping that, you know, everyone in the population can be a client. So how are you going to do that if you don't understand what are the challenges around being financially included? Because you cannot just make an assumption that the same challenges everyone faces to be financially included are similar across the board. And so it's really those unique aspects that we need to take care of, so that as we design these financial products, as we design all these programs, we're really thinking about that. When it comes to inclusivity, and I like that we're having this conversation as we are really, after we've gone through the pandemic and we've seen how much it has affected most people, but also I think it has also highlighted how it can be enabling for many, especially women. Today, with the mindset around remote working has helped in many ways for people who have to wear multiple hats throughout the day, and for one reason or the other it becomes difficult to do that. Some of them will end up losing their jobs, or just putting aside their professional career just to maybe focus on their families, their young families. And so these opportunities around how we use digital technologies to sort of balance the different hats that you have to wear make it much, much easier. So why is inclusion very important, and diversity for us as a country is leaving no one behind is important. We're not just targeting 50%. That has never been a focus for us. Our focus has been how do we make sure, whether it's access to electricity, access to basic things like education, and now technology and internet becomes now a basic right for everyone. How do we make sure that access is assured for 100% of the people? So it's not just a good slogan around inclusivity, it's just making sure that everyone is included. And now that we know that technology has that enabling effect, technology has that effect where that multiplier effect of making sure that access to all these basics, can be afforded by everyone, more so than makes it important that it's really something where you cannot talk about access and digital transformation without making sure that inclusion is front and center of everything that you do. No, I couldn't agree more. I think there's no excuse, but I think at the end of the day, it's multi-edged sword. So it's one thing where we will talk about the need for, having more women at the table. I think it's another thing for women to really take their place at the table. So it's not that one particular strategy or way of doing things is going to unlock that, but I think the starting point is, can we even be very intentional about providing them with those opportunities? And then we'll deal with the fact that now we have to make sure that when they are provided with those opportunities, when they see a door opening, they go for it, right? Because I think that's also important. Every time an opportunity presents itself, you need to know that you'll be measured equally like your male counterparts. And so how do you make sure that really the choice of you being at the table is one that will not be regretted by yourself as a person who's been given that opportunity, but also by those people that have given you that opportunity. So I think it's a multi-pronged way of looking at it. Now, again, the starting point is always going, depending also on cultures. And so we're very lucky as a country that for us, those cultural barriers that existed have been really broken down, again, because of the that intentionality in different government programs. From the top leadership, our president has been the greatest champion for making sure that women are in decision-making positions, women are part of finding solutions to the problem that the society has, and that has really trickled down very well at all levels. And so everyone feels empowered, everyone feels like, I must also find these opportunities myself, I shouldn't sit back and wait for those opportunities to come find me. And it's a good place to be. It's a good time to be alive for us as Rwandans, knowing that those cultural barriers are put aside. Now, will you find some of those in certain parts of the country? I think so. But I think it's really that continuous dialogue and conversation around, women, girls understanding that they also have a place in really solving for the problems and building the society that we want it to be. And so that goes back to the role of the family, that goes back to the role of role models, families making sure that girls are equally empowered as boys, and specifically when we talk about technology, when we talk about STEM fields, knowing that, girls do not necessarily have to go for, some of the, careers that will end up with administrative roles, but rather it's knowing that even what seems like impossible, they should be able to do it, and giving them those equal opportunities. And then ultimately creating those role models, people that girls will look at and feel like, you know what, I could also be where that person is in the next 10, 20 years or 30 years. But allowing for that dialogue, because I think everyone's journey is unique, and in everyone's journey, there's so many people that are going to find inspiration from it. And so how do we create a platform where those stories are shared, where people talk about, what their journey has been growing up, and how they got encouraged or inspired to take on what they're doing. Now, one person's story may not inspire you, but the other person will inspire you. But it's always important to have those stories out there, because then what you do, you're planting a good seed where every young girl, wherever they are, is already thinking, okay, if this person can do it, if I seem to feel like I have a similar background as this person, but if they can't do it, if they've defied the odds and they're where they are, so can I. And so again, that's why I said it's really a multi-pronged approach to what are we teaching them at home, what is being taught in schools, how are we providing equal opportunities in the different programs, but also at the same time, how are we creating these role models that are so essential for us to see more girls and women funneling through some of these professional fields where we continue to see a lack of women representation. Well, I've had a couple of them. I think I'll continue to have many. Again, I think you have many depending on your areas of interest, people that you have a similar passion, background, whatever it is. But I think for me, even just growing up was probably my father, who in many ways, for him, we were all equal. And he made sure that we all had the opportunities. He made sure that he wanted all of us, all his 6 kids, to probably get into sciences and STEM fields. So I think that in itself, he would push all of us equally. And so, I mean, from a parent-child relationship, you always felt like you really need to, if he's given you the confidence that you can do it, but he was also very deliberate about helping us through some of these things and life's choices. So that was also very possible. So I think my father was definitely one of having had an engineering background. I mean, he I could say was my role model just growing up. Now, once you get into the professional world, again, you start to, identify people that will inspire you, whether it's on the values that they hold, or people that pretty much also challenge you, because I think it's not just about inspiring you, it's also someone who's going to nudge you and say, I don't think you're doing really enough. I think you could do more, right? You need those, so that balance is needed between someone who is saying you can do it, this is possible, why not? But it's also the people who will really give you the hard truth and say, you're really not cutting close to what your potential could possibly be. So even from a professional sense, I've had those kind of role models that have been able to nudge me until I felt very uncomfortable, until I got out of my comfort zone and felt like, okay, maybe I can try this. There's never a role I think I have ever taken in my life where I walked in feeling very confident, like I can do it. So I always had my doubts. I think many people do. But then you have those people that you surround yourself with who will sort of, motivate you and say, you can do it. You actually can do it. You should put the fear aside. We don't know why you are thinking that way. And so then you take one day at a time. And I hope I can, extend the same, support that I've been given to more, girls and young boys alike as well, because they also need a bit of mentorship and support. I hope I can pay it back for them as well, because I couldn't be where I was without, the different role models in the professional setting that I've had, that I've looked up to, and that have inspired me to do more and do better. So I think what excites me is that changes are constant. So what that really means is that and maybe perhaps it also speaks to my personality. I get bored with things very quickly. So being in a field that is constantly changing, I think is also something that I, wake up looking forward to every day, because there's just a lot that you have to, you're constantly on your toes trying to figure out how do we stay ahead. And so for me, that's one. But I think what is very exciting in very basic terms is the potential. is the potential to really drive meaningful impact. And I love to talk about this because there's not a single field where technology does not have impactful promises. The quick question though is, how do you deploy it in the right way? Because when you don't, the unintended consequences can be far-reaching, and so I think it's really the ability to solve problems, to solve them more efficiently, but to solve them much faster. But also, I think it's the equalizing effect that technology has. So it doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, what your background is. When you put technology at the disposal of most people, then everyone has access to the same kind of opportunities. And this links back to the question around talent. I mean, gone are the days where you had to be only in the best schools to get the best exposure in terms of education. Right now, the amount of knowledge and opportunities we have online to reskill and upskill and keep ahead, of whatever industry you're in are just immersive. And so it's just really, how do you provide that access in a very basic way for everyone to be able to access all those opportunities. But I think it's just a change where you know that there's no one size fits all. Things are going to change. You're going to try some things and fail. But ultimately, when you get that one thing that works, the impact is going to be enormous and really far-reaching in many ways. And so it's very exciting, but I think we need to start with the basics in making sure that everyone can access and can benefit from these exciting promises that come with technology, but also doing it in a safe manner, because we all know the dangers of the digital world that we live in. We all know the concerns we all carry as parents, our kids, how much are they exposed to, what are the safeguards that we are putting in place. So I think beyond just the excitement, it's also the reality that comes with how do you make sure that when we talk about meaningfully being connected, it also means that the risks and the concerns that we all have are also being addressed head on, and we're not just excited about what is to come and not thinking about what could potentially be some of those negative consequences. Absolutely. But it's definitely still exciting nonetheless. I think one is being uncomfortable that you know everything. I think that's very important, and that is tied back to having a learning and growth mindset. Everything that comes your way, how much of it are you researching? Are you trying to understand? How are you surrounding yourselves with people who even have probably more expertise than you do in that particular field? Because that's the only way that you're going to be able to learn. Two, when we talk about claiming your place again, I think it's the way we look at it. It's not necessarily saying you're going to lead people and everything. It's also, how are you going to work with others to achieve impact? You may be in the driving seat, you may be in the supporting role, sort of trying to figure out in this equation of trying to solve for something, what's the best role that I can play with the skills or the opportunities that I have with me. But also, how do I use every opportunity that I'm given to be part of something? How do I use it to grow, to know better and to learn better? And so it's constantly those checks that you must have and say, what have I learned from X that I did this week or this month or last year? Because the absence of that, you could be floating, right? Because there's just so many things that are happening in many ways. And so if you're just running from one place to another and not sitting back to reflect and sort of figure out, what have I learned? What could I have done differently? Then you're not able to carry those lessons into the next opportunity or assignment that you have. But then for me, I think the biggest thing is just staying open to learning, knowing that you will not know everything, but also, so it's learning and always trying to find solutions, like problem solving. Because I think it's also very easy to get lost in defining problems. And I don't think people just want you to define the problem. They want you to give them options on how do we solve for that, however difficult it's going to be. And then being able to break it down in such a way that allows for everyone, to feel a part and parcel of finding that solution. The tech field is one interesting one. I remember getting into this role, and one of the very early feedback that I was getting from myself and for my team was that every time we're trying to communicate, people get lost because it's very technical, you're using technical jargons, and so it's even difficult to be able to articulate what problem you have and how you're trying to solve for it. And so I feel like that has been our constant, learning of trying to figure out, okay, there's this problem, how do I communicate it in such a way that everyone understands what we're trying to solve for, but also understands how they can help us to solve for it. So really claiming your place is being open and constantly learning, but also being a problem solver, because not everyone is comfortable being around someone who can just articulate a problem. You also must be able to have solutions. They may not work, but at least have the ability to execute the full range of solutions that you could think of to that problem, and somehow one of them is going to work. And so I think those two things is really what helps you to be at the table, but also add value, because it's not enough to just be at the table. It's what value are you bringing to that table. We've had a couple of initiatives, and not necessarily even spearheading, but even being a part of. One of them has been the Girls in ICT program that I was part of, I'm still part of, and what it does really is it brings together women and girls that are in the tech field, and what we do is to create, to advocate, to go out to these schools, outreach, talk to the students, encourage them to take on STEM fields, talk about our particular journey and experience, what we're doing. They get to ask questions, and so, but also maintain that relationship that allows you to mentor them as they sort of, choose what careers that they want to take on. That's one. Then the other one which we created, which was Miss Geek, which was really now a competition that brought together young girls to solve for problems. And so it was, it started in Rwanda and it has grown to about 22 countries now, which is phenomenal, because we hope that one day we can even bring all the 22 countries or more together, where we're able to bring these young girls together to solve for problems together, but expose them to each other and what they're trying to do. Because again, when we talk about diversity in the workforce, diversity is not just from a gender lens, it's also from a cultural background. So if you're solving for a healthcare problem, it may not necessarily be different from what is being solved for in the western part of Africa or north or southern part. And so even having a diversity of teams that will bring on board different experiences will allow you to build for global solutions. And that's what we want. If we're talking about having young girls and women that build unicorns, it means they have to be able to build products that are global in nature, and so that diversity of the team is really needed. So that's one of the programs that we're particularly excited we've been part of, and we want to continue supporting. But also here as a ministry, also as a government, we have a number of programs where what we do, whether it's supporting startups, we're very intentional about finding those startups that are women-led, not to give them preference over male-led startups, but also to encourage them so that they can be able to grow their businesses. We launched about more than 3 years ago the Rwanda Coding Academy as really a bridge program for giving us the much-needed skills that we need. And so even with that one, we've been very deliberate about making sure there's a 50-50 split in terms of the students that come in. So you have 50 girls. If the intake is 120, then you have 60 girls and 60 boys coming in, and that's very important, because again, if we're talking about tackling the problem from the root and understanding how to funnel these young girls through the profession, we need to start very early in even making sure that they take some of these program choices very, very early on. Rwanda is also leading as part of the Generation Equality Forum. We're leading on the one around tech and innovation, and here again is really around how we ensure that we're empowering more women and girls to take on whether it's tech careers, but also to be part of building companies and startups. And we have so many role models globally, and I think really we're starting off at a very good foundation where we're able to highlight these various role models and get more and more girls coming in. So there's just a lot that is being done. But again, back to the very early conversation, for us, everything that we do, the gender lens is very important in making sure that that inclusivity is there. Even in our hiring, we make sure that we're giving equal opportunities, in making sure that we have a balanced team, whether it's here at the ministry at the policy level, in the implementation, our network of chief digital officers. There's a very good, representation of the gender. So it's really just being intentional about it and building off some of those foundations to allow for this to really now create the impact that we're looking for. Because it's not just really a statistic that we're ticking the box. It's really also ultimately what is it that they've done that we would never have achieved if we weren't deliberate about this gender balance in the workforce. I think it's a simple message. Nothing is impossible. And I've had a couple of times where people feel like, you know, engineering, it's a hard field. And that's why we see more boys than you see girls that are getting into that. And honestly, I don't believe engineering is any more difficult from, you know, any other program that one would want to take. So I think it's even just starting by believing in yourself and breaking those biases that engineering is going to be difficult, because it's learned. And so the same way you're going to learn about being an accountant, you can learn to be a chemical engineer and you'll be able to do it. And so just breaking those biases and everyone believing in them. So again, it starts with you, because if you don't have that drive yourself, it doesn't matter how many role models you get, it doesn't matter how many doors and opportunities get to be handed to you. It still starts with you at an individual level. So to all the girls and all you know, the women out there, it starts with you. You need to believe in yourself, and no one will tell you that it's possible. It starts with you, and everyone else will fall in line. But it starts with you in believing in yourself and knowing that nothing is impossible. Everything you put your mind to is very possible, and there's never going to be a field that will not come with its challenges. I think what's important is to understand that you can navigate those challenges one day at a time. And so let's break the bias that there are certain fields that are much easier than the others, because truly speaking, none is. Everyone will have its set of challenges. But again, if you're really focused on making it work, the universe will definitely respond positively.